Hi, I'm Salita from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with John Buja or J.Edwin Buja, depending on whether you are going to, after an adult horror book or a young adult book and children's book. So, John, why don't you talk about that for us?
Um, yeah, sure. Back at the turn of the century, this one, I had two children's books published. There's a little publisher up in the Northwest Territories before it was Nunavut, and they were for grades 4 to 6, and they did fairly well until the publisher went under because the ice bridge didn't form in time. I know that sounds weird. Um, they had to bring the paper to the plant, the printing plant, over ice, and it didn't form soon enough. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Um, so then I
Idiot.
came up
That's
with
why.
yeah,
That's why it's
I
up
came up with
there.
the adult book. Um, this one, yeah, this one came out first in 2019, and it's really adult. Like there's a lot of swearing, a lot of sex. Well, not much sex, but it's an adult book, and I figured anybody that had read the kids' books expecting the same pick that up and get shocked. So I actually have had a couple of people that I met back in 2000, 2001 when I was going to schools to talk about the books, message me and say, "Oh, I hear you're still writing. What are the books like?" And I have to tell them, like, be prepared because they're not children's books anymore. So so I used the J. Edwin, inspired by Ramsey Campbell when he first appeared. He was J. Ramsey Campbell. And
Oh,
when the book came out, that was the first time most of the world knew my middle name was Edwin. I'd always kind of kept it quiet. Didn't want to be called Eddie. So it's my Polish uncle.
okay.
Yeah.
So, for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
Well, these ones are folk horror. Um, I took some mythology, switched it around, totally made it up, and wrote horror novels. This one's more of a thriller. The one that's coming out in May is a ghost story, time travel, serial killer mystery, I hope. And then most of my short fiction is horror, but it's funny if I can make it funny. I don't like to take things too seriously. So, in King of the Wood, there's a the second chapter, the main bad guy is killing someone rather nastily, and it's pretty funny because he's
It's
clumsy. He slips in the blood. He gets stuff all over himself. Like he's just, he's a clean freak. So I just try to lighten the mood. So
it's hard to
yeah,
lighten the mood when you're killing somebody.
yeah, he kills him in a funny way, I guess. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I just find it's easier to be a bit funny about stuff. I mean, I've got some stuff that's really serious, um, and some stuff that has made people cry, which was kind of nice in a way. But yeah, I like to keep it light if I can.
I yeah, light horror is different, I think. So how would what do you think draws readers to the light horror side as opposed to the heavy horror?
I'm not sure. I mean, I like it just because I like a laugh. I watched a lot of the early slasher movies, and they were dim. Like they got boring. They were too serious. They were too nasty. All the focus was on the killings and no plot. And I ended up laughing at them because they were so bad most of the time. But I think people just want a relief. I mean, there were back in the 90s, there was the splatterpunk that suddenly came out, really gory, deep, horrible, horrible stuff. Like, the places people wouldn't go, they went. And I think humorous horror maybe is a reaction to that. At least for me, it was. Um, just to, bring the mood, lighten the mood a little bit. I mean, I do kill people in the most horrible ways possible, and there's nasty, nasty shit happening. But like I say, I do it with a laugh sometimes. You know,
Sometimes sometimes you
Uh,
need
I have a little story with a cannibal who bites his nails, except there's somebody else's nails on a foot. So, you know, Yeah, figure that one out.
I guess sometimes you need the comic relief, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you're reading something really, really deep and really serious, if you have a comic
Mhm.
relief, it kind of ha, ha.
And
Okay.
just well, I'm a big history buff. All those books behind me, this section right here is all World War One. I read a couple of memoirs recently. A Canadian cannon who was there, and just a regular soldier. And this is stories about them in World War One in the trenches, people getting blown up, gassed, and the books were funny. I mean, some of the funny stuff that they made you laugh. I mean, World War One isn't funny, but the stories they told, the way they told them, like, getting wounded, getting gassed, they lightened it up a bit. And I figured if those guys can do it, yeah, why not? I do too.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your latest book.
Okay,
And
that's Coverdale. I'm not really good at describing what it is. Basically, it's family moves to a small town because everything happens in a small town. Um, the main character is named Charlie. He's 18, and he's inquisitive, nosy, history buff, kind of like me. Most of my main characters are kind of based on me in a way. Like it's easier that way. Um, anyway, he starts asking questions because there are strange things going on in town. He finds some ancient coins in his backyard. Um, finds a Viking longship at one point, and the kids seem to be kind of robotic in a way at times. Like, you have to join a team to be a better citizen. You have to be a good person to join in. And they're pretty much cut off from the outside world. There's no proper internet. And history is taught in a strange way that makes especially the Romans really, really bad guys. So he starts asking questions and gets into a lot of trouble about it. Somebody's reporting on him every time he does something wrong. But then he meets the daughter, or actually the granddaughter of the mayor of the town, falls madly in love with her, and turns out she's a bit of a rebel too. And so they have to try and figure out what's going on and how to stop people from being killed and how to save their own lives. And then it ends, and there's going to be a sequel, actually two sequels. The next one doesn't take place in Coverdale. Coverdale's a little town. If you want the location, it's sort of north of the St. Lawrence River in Quebec, but not really. It's just the only place I could think of where you could have a small town surrounded by hills where people may not know it's there. Go up one of the small rivers there. Um, the next one's going to be set at a university in Massachusetts that doesn't exist. I'm just making it up. And then the third one will bring it all together, solve the mystery, see what's going on, why these people are strange the way they are, and how everything gets resolved. I hope if I get around to writing the two of them.
now, how would you classify that? Would you classify it as horror or
Um,
or
not really horror, no,
suspense?
nothing. Um, it's not supernatural, really. It's just strange.
Suspense
Um,
or
yeah. Well, I don't know if you've read the book Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon.
oh,
That's another small town, weird stuff going on. Nothing supernatural, but what's going on behind the scenes is really nasty and horrible. Same with things like The Wicker Man. Um,
okay.
no, it's not unreal. Well, okay, there's a weird cult going on and people are getting sacrificed, so that's not really real, but there's nothing, no monsters or anything like that. What
Okay.
are you gonna do? But
So
so
this
yeah,
is actually considered a YA book.
yeah, that's because it's actually the first thing I wrote back in 1996. I wrote this one, and it was based on Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Um, I like the myth, the possibility that Jesus was still alive, and there's all this cult following him, and the Knights Templar were agents of Christ in a different way. And then Dan Brown came out with the Da Vinci Code and stole my idea. So I had to change it quite drastically. And at that time, it was an adult book, but it was much shorter. And I'd submitted it to a publisher, and he asked me if I could expand it because it was originally about 50,000 words, and now it's up to about 90. And so he rejected it after all. But then my current publisher asked if I could do it as a YA novel. So yeah, I went through and I took out 27 words that begin with a C and about 15 or 16 that begin with an F. Um, you know, there's one character in it that's really, really nasty that I really disliked. So everybody refers to him as a sucker. Um, Not anymore though.
Your characters, is there one character that you loved or hated the most?
Well, originally I liked the main character, Charlie, because he's kind of me when I was 18. Falls in love with a girl, fumbles all over the place, doesn't really know what to do, is lacks confidence, meets her, gets clumsy, can't speak. But then when I expanded it, I added a new character who's really, really nasty, and he's based on somebody I know who's, um, let's just say that if I ever met him, I would have a brick in my hand if I ever meet him again. So I based it on him. So he's really nasty, and I hate his guts. And it was fun writing him into, you know, stuff's going to happen to him. And in the other books, I have a major character who's also based on somebody else that I know, and I get revenge on him. So it's nice being a writer because you can do nasty stuff to people you don't like. You can also do nasty stuff to people you like, and sometimes they like it. They get a kick out of it. I kill one of my friends in one of the books, um, and he thought it was funny. You know, I'm in a book, and then I get murdered. Yay!
So do you come up with the plots for the stories before you create the characters, or do you create the characters first and then
Um,
really take the characters and build the story around the characters?
well, okay. The King of the Wood, the first big one, the folk horror one. Um, that came about. I wrote a little vignette. I was taking a writing class at university, and I wrote a little vignette based on a baseball game at Nikon, this convention that we had, that's been going on since 1980. And so I wrote up this baseball game story, but I made it a little weird. And then I thought, oh, I like the characters. I'll expand it. And then I went to the first Borderlands boot camp. And by that time, I had written the beginning of the book. And I just started expanding it. The basic idea for the bigger part of the book was, what would you do if all the wood in your house started to grow? So suddenly your bookshelves have roots. You know, your deck becomes all one giant piece of wood. Um, how would you react to that? And that's what's going on in the first book. Um, so that was an idea. The other one was just, I wanted to write something. I just read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and I thought, nah, what the heck? I'll see what I can do. And so usually it's an idea. Um, the one that is coming out in May, it's called Enough Time. It's from Crystal Lake. That one, back in 2005, there was an open call to pitch books to I think it was either Ace or Berkeley. They were starting a series about a small inn, so I wrote a little piece, sent it in, got rejected, of course. But then I took that as the beginning. It was set in 1945, and I took that as the start, and just said, well, what if the ghost in this book or in this story appears again in 1985 and had appeared in 1905? And where does that begin? And how does it all relate? And why? Who killed the guy in the first chapter, and who killed the girl in the first chapter? And so it's a bit of a jumble. I make spreadsheets, and I do
Okay.
research. Yeah, I do a lot. I like doing research. I do a lot of research. So I'm a history major. So
Okay.
yeah, for Coverdale, I researched, well, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Of course, I keep saying that, but some Roman history, little bit of French Canadian history back in the 1700s. Vikings supposedly landed in North America, so did a lot of reading on those. The other ones, the folk horror ones were a little different in that I researched trees because trees play a big part. So I read everything I could find on trees, all the mythology about trees, the characteristics of various types of wood, um, what trees are still around, what trees are extinct in North America. Also, the main character in the second book, the consort, is a university professor from Scotland, a woman, and she's got the foulest mouth you'll ever come across. So I spent a lot of time researching Scottish curse words. My in-laws are Scottish, so I know a few. So, that's the thing. And for the one that's coming out in um, May, I had to research a bit of World War II history, the German nuclear program, um, Civil War history, uh, the World's Fair, and there was a World's Fair in 1895, and I've forgotten where it was. Um, so just various periods, because I want everything to be realistic. I'm a fanatic for accuracy. Um, example, I read a story by a friend of mine last year, and he had a song playing in the background, and the book was set in 1910. The song didn't come out until 1917. So now most people wouldn't care. I did. Another friend of mine had a book, and I read it, an advanced copy of it, and he used an expression that didn't really come into use until the mid 50s, but his book is set in the early 1900s. So, if you're going to use a term like, how did people swear in 1945? They don't swear like they do now.
Mhm. No.
So, yeah. And a lot of the short fiction is either set in World War One or World War Two. So I'll research a battle and then the weapons used at the time, um, the ranks, the proper ranks in the various armies. Usually it's the Canadian Army because I'm in Canada and I want to promote the Canadian history. Um, so I want that all to be accurate, the right weapons, the right place to be, the even so far as going find out what the weather was like on a particular day. Um, to go even deeper, I'm working on another book based on concerts I went to in Detroit in the 70s. And I still have all my ticket stubs and I still remember everything that was going on at the shows. I've got the set lists. I even found some videos, some of the shows, and know the layouts of all the venues. And I went through, and for every day that the novel is taking place, I found out what the weather was like in Windsor and Detroit in like 1976 or 1975, because I wanted my characters to be, like they're freezing because it's snowing that Friday evening, or it's really hot that July afternoon, something like that. So um, that's really the most fun part about the writing is doing the research.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was talking to a
Yeah.
lot of historical fiction authors, and they were saying that you really have to get it right, exactly what you're saying,
Yeah,
because
because
you
some
never
idiot
know
like
who's going
me
to
will
be reading
notice.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
You never know who's going to be reading it, and
yeah.
it has to be right.
I
So
mean,
research is
yeah, an
important.
example I give too is it's not. I guess they didn't really care about the research. It's a movie that came out. I forget which one it was. It was a science fiction movie in the 50s. And what you see is there's the monsters there, and so the U.S. Air Force is going to go and fight them. And you see Saber jets taking off, and then in the sky attacking the thing, you see Thunder jets, which are completely different. They don't even look the same. And then you see the Sabers landing. It's like, come on, guys, don't can't you see they're different planes? You know, I mean, most people don't care. They want to know what's going to happen to the monster. Is the world going to end? I want the planes to be right. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Do you, being Canadian, do you find it more difficult to sell your books, especially to a U.S. audience?
no. Well, um, I'm really more part of the New England horror community because I've been going to Nikon, my wife and I, since 1987. I have dozens and dozens of writer friends down there. I was just there last week A friend of mine, Tony Tremblay, was doing a presentation. I went down to see him. I've been to a bunch of conventions, go to book signings down there. Um, my publisher is in Massachusetts, Haverhill House. Um,
Yeah.
so really, I wasn't really thinking about what market I was going to. I just wanted to get published, and it happens to be in the US. I'm terrible at self-promotion, so I haven't done much up here. I'm just sort of starting to get back into things and starting to look into places to go up here. Like I think I mentioned to you earlier, I was at a craft fair, Christmas craft fair last weekend. First time I've done anything like that in Canada. Um,
Wow.
so it was kind of fun, you know. So there's a local book organization in Ottawa. I live just outside Ottawa. A bunch of conventions. A friend of mine from way, way back is a fairly well-known author in Canada now, a horror writer, and he goes around and lectures on how to get published. And so I've been talking to him about how to get my name out there in Canada a bit more. So it's a learning process, and I have to get over the fact that I'm shy and I hate saying good things about my writing, even though I am quite good. Um, but I don't like saying that. I prefer it when other
Excuse,
people say,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, Getting back to the Coverdale.
Hmm.
What was the actual inspiration for Coverdale? I mean, why did you want to write that book?
Um, well, I'd been working as a bookstore manager for 14 years, and I got let go for various reasons. So I decided I'll do some writing. I always wanted to write. I've been writing stuff off and on since I was like 7, but never really got serious about getting anything published. And so in 96, I wrote a short story that actually got published in a magazine. My first published short story, um, which was funny because it was in the magazine and it was continued on like page 32. And on page 32, there was an illustration that covered up the last line of the story, which kind of summarized everything. Um, but then I thought, okay, I'm going to try writing a novel. And, you know, the usual trope is small town weird stuff. So I just started writing a novel. Wasn't really, I'm a pantser. I tend to just start writing and I'm not really sure where it goes. Um, I, in a way, I wanted to have a teenage romance. All my books really are romances. That's, you know, there's a guy and a girl and they get together eventually, I hope. So I wanted to have a teenage romance. So how would that work in a small town where weird crap's going on and nobody wants these two to get together because, you know, the evil people want to keep hold of the girl. They had plans for her and they don't like the kid. And then it sort of developed from there. I wrote out some notes. What I usually do once I get started is do character biographies. So I'll know everything about the character that I need to know, like how old they are, what they're like, their personality, what they like to eat, where they went to school, any trauma they had, hobbies, stuff like that. A lot of it doesn't make it into the books,
Mhm.
but it helps me when I'm trying to describe how somebody reacts, how a character reacts, like in Coverdale, how the main character reacts when he finds a box of Roman coins in his backyard, and it's like, you know, I know what I would do if I found that. I'd just go berserk and think, wow, I got all this old stuff. Got to go look it up. Got to do research about it and find out what these all are, which is what he does. And he finds out that these coins are worth a lot of money. Oh, I'm set for life, which he thinks, but things don't quite work out that way. So, and then I do spreadsheets. I have spreadsheets where I have each chapter. The main characters are listed for the chapter, the timeline. I'm 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 a fanatic for timelines. Like I have to, if something happens today and then the next chapter it says, oh, it happened 3 days ago, it better be the 3 days later properly. Like if this is Monday, it better not be Friday here, and I've said 3 days ago. Um,
Right.
so, and something else to do is to do maps. So I did a map of Coverdale so that when the action's taking place, I know that if kid walks out the front door and he turns right, he's going north for this particular street and he's going to end up here. Not he turns right and I have him ended up in some place that's south of the town. That's one of those things that bothers me too. Even so far as to draw out the house, the layout of the house, so that if something happens by the dining room table and he trips over a chair on the other side of the table, it's in the right place on the other side of the table. Um, so yeah, and that's basically pantsing the story and then deciding, okay, this is where it's going. This is what I want to do. And the hardest part was like, what is the core? What is the stuff that's why is it happening? I mean, I've got all this action going on. I got these mysteries going on. What is at the core of it? And at the core of it is blood. Whose? Originally, it was going to be Christ's blood, but that didn't work. Um, so talking to a writer friend of mine, she read the book and loved it and suggested somebody else. And it was like, oh wow, that just like brought it all together. And so now I know what's happening and why. So I
Interesting.
can finish. Yeah, it's
Interesting.
kind of like brainstorms. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I love the way you're explaining about the little details that you have to know. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you don't even think about that. Yeah,
Oh,
okay, the sofa is over here, and the lamp is here, and things like
yeah.
that. You
Well,
just
in these ones in the first book, there's an event that there's some action that happens in a pub, and the main character is watching something happening across the pub. In this one, it's the person across the pub looking back at that one, so that the scenes are, you know, it's the same scene from two different points of view. So I have to make sure that everything's in the right place. Like the one character's here looking across, and she's sitting at a table, and there's a beer there, and there's a table over there, and there's a seat there, and there's a man standing there. So when she's looking back at him, there better be a beer on the table here with a guy standing behind her and somebody sitting over there, and she can see the way they're seated, the way I described it in the first book,
Mhm.
things like that.
So what point of view do you prefer to write in?
Um, third person. I do have lots of points of view, but I break it up. Like in well, actually in Coverdale, it's all from the point of view of the main character, Charlie. In the other books, it's different points of view. Like I'll have the main character in this one, it's Tom, and then it'll switch to the King of the Wood. It'll be his point of view, and then it'll bounce around. I think in the big one, I've got like 8 or 9 different points of view. But usually it all happens in a chronological order, and there's a logic to it, and it's again, I have to be careful that if I have a character doing something from their point of view, if there's another character involved, they better be where they're supposed to be. Um, so I find it easier to do it that way because you know if I'm writing about somebody that's being assaulted, which okay, that doesn't sound very nice. I want to do it from the point of view of the victim, so
Mm.
that I can really tell what the person's going through from the point of view of the person doing the assaulting. Well, you know what's going on in that person's mind. You don't really I don't care. I want to see it from this person's point of view. But then the next section will be the person that was doing the assault, and it's from that person's perspective, reflecting on what happened just a few moments ago and how he reacted to it, or she, or it. So it gives a lot more flexibility. And again, that's another one of those things where I was reading a book, and the Blue Max actually, and because I'd seen the movie back in the 60s and I really loved the movie, so I thought I'd read the novel. And in the I think it was like within the first 3 or 4 pages, there's a character and you're seeing everything from his perspective, and he's talking to his commanding officer on the other side of the desk. And then suddenly it's from the point of view of the commanding officer. It's like, okay, that doesn't work because it's from this guy, but now it's suddenly this guy. I guess there's the what is it, the third person omniscient, where you get to see everybody's thought processes. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want everybody, I don't want the reader to know what this person's thinking and this person at the same time. It's this person is the one you're concentrating on. This person's just he's he's furniture. Like he's part of the thing, but this is the guy you want to work on, and this is the woman you want to concentrate on. So everything's about her. And then I can use like internal dialogue a lot easier. It takes away a lot of the confusion about who's the focus of the scene. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing out and writing and putting out Coverdale?
The biggest challenge?
Hmm.
It's a novel. The biggest thing I'd ever written before this was my master's thesis, which was 125 type pages. Like, this is a novel. They're big, they're fat. They take they take hours to write. Um, so overcoming the fear of, can I do something this big? Well, yeah, this one's about 80,000 words. The other one, when this was finished, was 225,000 words. So, like, getting over the hump of, can I do something that big? But then once you start doing it, it's, am I good enough?
Hmm.
Imposter syndrome. Like, yeah, I can write this story, but is it going to be any good? Is anybody going to want to read it? Um, am I wasting my time? Because I know I've read stuff at uh, in writing groups where the person should should just stop. Please stop writing. I didn't want to be that person. So it's getting over the imposter part and actually doing something. And then the next step from that is getting somebody to read it. Because, yeah, I might think it's wonderful, but my first reader, who is upstairs doing her quilts, my wife, Diane, she reads everything first. If she likes it, I've done a good job. If there's something she doesn't like, I better fix it. And then once she approves it, sounds like she's in charge of my life, which basically she is, but we'll let that part go. Um, Once she's read it, once I'm satisfied with it, then I have to get over the idea of giving it to some stranger. Um,
Hmm.
but luckily, being in the horror community, it's a lot easier to do that now. Because I've got more people that are willing to read, and I've got um, first readers who are honest. Like one of the worst things you can do is give your whatever you've written to somebody, like give it to your mother. What do you think, Mom? She's gonna love it because she loves you. It could be the worst piece of crap she's ever read, but she's not going to tell you that because, you know, she wants birthday presents and Christmas presents, and she wants you to take care of her when she's old. Um, so you find somebody who's neutral. It could be a friend, perfect stranger. Get them to read it, you'll get honest feedback. And it's usually better than, oh, I like this. Well, why did you like it? What did you like about it? What worked? What didn't? So then there's the next hurdle, growing a thick skin and taking criticism. I mean,
Hmm.
it feels really great when somebody tells you, "Oh, this is the best story I've read. It made me cry. It made me afraid. It gave me the shivers. I laughed my ass off, and I want to read more." But then from the other's perspective, this is crap. Why did you bother with this? Like, um, on Amazon, I've got some, not a lot of reviews, so please do some reviews. Um, on the first book, and some glowing reviews, and then there's a 1-star review, which I'm really proud of, where somebody basically said, this is garbage. Why did he bother? Good. Okay. I can't please everybody, so at least I know I offended somebody. If you can't offend somebody, what's the point? So you know, and then it keeps getting harder and harder. You've got other people saying they like what you're doing, you're happy with it. Then you have to send it to somebody to publish it. Get over that hump of, yeah, send it to a magazine that's open for submissions. Send it to a publisher. That's scary as hell. Um, getting that rejection. The first story I ever sent out back in '96, I got a reply back and said, this is boring. And upon rereading the story, yeah, it's boring.
Wow.
Okay, he was right. Um, and that's still sitting in a file box. I haven't done anything with that one because it's really a boring story. Um, but then the first time somebody says, yeah, I want to publish a story. Yeah, like I'm walking on air for hours. And it's even better if I happen to get two stories accepted on the same day, which has happened rarely, but it has happened, which is like, whoa. And then um, when the first book, the King of the Wood, um, I was talking to the publisher at Nikon actually, and he said, "Yeah, I want to do your book." And I'd had a few beers, so I thought he was joking, and I wasn't really hearing it properly. But then it was like, "Yeah, I want to do your book." And then later on, several years later, I actually sent him Coverdale. Not, sorry, I sent him a different book and had another offer from someone else, which I went with, and he was really gracious about that. So I sent him this one. And at one point he said, yeah, I don't have to read whatever you send me. I know it'll be good. Which
Oh,
coming from the publisher is like, oh, how do you answer that?
wow. That's
I mean,
wonderful.
I'm not going to let that go to my head, except when I'm alone and there's nobody around and I can really like say all this nice stuff about myself because, then nobody's going to say, oh, an egotistical twit. Um, but yeah, that's getting that book out. But of course, then there's the next obstacle, the public selling the book. And people coming up to you and, what's this? Do I want to read it? Do I want to pay $25 for a book? Okay, I'll take a chance on it. And you got to kind of like, if you like it, can you do a review or can you send me an email? And if you hate it, can you just keep quiet? Don't tell anyone. So, it's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Like the challenge right now is these books are done. I have three more that I have to do. There's sequels to these, plus another one I'm working on. I got to write another book. I have ideas. I've started them. Can I finish them? I'm back to the beginning again, starting over. So we'll see.
Groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
Um, the biggest help I got was from writing groups. Um, I started going to writing groups back in the 1990s. That was good to just see what other people were writing and to get some critiques. Although the problem I had with that is that the people weren't writing anything close to what I was doing. I give them a gory horror story and they're writing little romance poetry, and it's like I'm sort of putting them off. So yeah, if you can get a writing group of 4 or 5 people or even 10, where you meet regularly, you share stuff, you critique each other, you can trust these people that if they do say something negative about your book or your story, it's not spiteful. They're trying to help. Um, Writing workshops. I went to the first two Borderlands workshops, 2005, 2006, where again I got critiqued by the likes of David Morrell, who's one of my idols, uh, Jack Ketchum, Dallas Mayer. He critiqued me. Doug Winter. Um, I'm forgetting it. Peter Straub. I mean,
Wow.
when somebody you idolize says, "Yeah, this is pretty good. You should continue writing it." Okay, thank you. That, I have validation, so that's another way of, um, yeah. For me, those kind of groups are important. I know there's the the, the larger groups, the Horror Writers of America. Or is it the Horror Writers Association now? I was there when it was Howl, back in the '90s. Those are good for beginners if you want to get doing networking, meeting other writers, going to events. There's the New England Horror Writers, the Horror Writers of Maine. Um, those are the ones I'm aware of. I mean, if you're doing science fiction, there's the oh heck, I've completely blanked on what the science fiction is. It Science Fiction Writers of America?
Yeah, SFWA.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's, the Thriller Writers of America. So there are organizations, sort of professional organizations for just about any genre. Um, you can join them. You don't have to be a writer to join them. You can be an associate. And then when you meet their writing qualifications, you can become a proper member, a full member, and more participating. Um, and that's great because you meet your peers and
Mhm.
you feel like you're a member of the community. Like that's a big, God, I keep talking so much. Sorry. Um, you want to be part of something, like, and that's the nice thing, especially about New England and especially about the horror community. It's
Yeah.
really nurturing and it's really friendly and accepting. I mean, it pretty much doesn't matter who you are, you're accepted into the community. Um, if you need help in some kind, I had some personal issues a few years ago, and I did a post on Facebook saying I'm in trouble, and within minutes I had messages and postings from friends offering me help from the horror community and from other friends as well, local friends. But that's the kind of support you get, and so you feel like you belong to something. You're not you're not some guy like I'm in a basement in a small town in Canada. The closest writer that I know in Canada is in Toronto, which is 6 hours away. I think there are a couple in Ottawa, but I don't really know them that well, so they kind of don't count. Oh, sorry, Montreal. I know a couple in Montreal, and that's about an hour and a half away. But I'm isolated here in my basement, surrounded by books, doing my thing. I can go on Facebook and I can message somebody and I can talk to other writers. Um, I exchanged some messages this morning, and it's great to feel part of something.
Hmm.
And what you're
Absolutely.
doing is in the greater scheme of things, what you're doing maybe isn't worth anything, but you're entertaining somebody. Somebody out there is going to be happy. I
Yep.
have one person that read one of my books this way back. She wrote a book. She was inspired to write her own little book, and she wrote a children's book. Um, I know she'd sent it out to a publisher, but I lost contact with her, so I don't know whatever happened to that. But I always said, if one child that reads one of my books starts to write, I'm done. I've accomplished all I need to do, and I can quit, which is a silly thing to say because if I quit, what was the point? So I didn't quit. I kept going, but
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Questions about you being a writer. What is your favorite part of being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Research. Like I
Okay.
said, I was a history major. Um, I love taking books. I'll go online and look for sources there. I've got tons of stuff, like anything I want to know about World War I, World War II, the American Civil War, Korea, Vietnam, um, general history, Canadian history, European history. Like I've got thousands of books here, my reference library, science stuff over there. I can go look up pretty much anything I want. Plus, I can go online and get the latest stuff, find obscure articles, find organizations that are. I was writing a story about a convoy in World War II crossing the North Atlantic. I found a whole bunch of websites dealing with the ships that were in the convoys and with stories from people that were in there. Can go find that stuff and get inspiration for things that happened and you know get get the get the personal views of people who were there so that the ship gets torpedoed. What did that feel like? Well, I can find somebody that will explain what that felt like. Um, and then if I'm writing a story in my story, I can use that experience to make it more real. I was going to say realer, but make it more accurate, make it more believable. And that's to me, that's about the best part. The
Mhm.
other best part is when somebody you admire, somebody you idolize, a writer says, I liked your latest book. That's just like that's wonderful. But
Okay.
that's not the well, it kind of is the best part in a way, but not really the best part. Like that's
Yeah.
not why I'm doing it. That's kind of like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
When David Morrell, who created Rambo and has written dozens of books, and they're all wonderful books, and has written a book about writing and how to write, says, "I like your stuff." Okay, I mentioned that earlier. That's further validation for what you're doing. But yeah, back to basics. It's the research, doing that, and
Okay.
also getting inspiration from the research. So like I want to do a story set during the Canadian liberation of the Netherlands. So I'm reading some stories and it's, okay, there was this part here where they had to use amphibious vehicles to cross this little bit of a river and blah, blah happened. Oh, what if? Uh, Another example, I was reading about World War One and around St. Eloi, um, the Allies, it was the British, dug beneath all the trenches and planted mines under the German lines. And there were 9 of these things done. And when they blew up, they blew the hell out of the Germans. What if there was one that didn't go? What if there was a 10th one and something weird happened with that? That was, I got that story published. You know, what if?
What
It's wonderful.
ifs?
What if is great when you're reading, like read history because what ifs are great. Also, you get to learn what really happened with stuff, um,
Okay.
which seems to be a thing that right now that people don't want to know what really happened with things, but you have to know because otherwise you're ill-informed and stupid. So, well, that was a bit bold.
So what do you consider the most challenging part of the whole writing process, and how do you overcome that?
Uh, Starting.
Uh,
I know that's might sound weird, but like it's always been said, you're standing there or sitting there in front of a typewriter with a blank piece of paper and you got to put something on it. How do you start? Well, the thing I found and what I used to tell students is just start writing. It doesn't matter what you're writing. If you've got a vague idea, just start typing, and it may all be complete and utter crap. But suddenly you're going to start finding, oh, that was a good sentence. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm on the flow. Blah blah blah. Throw away those first 2 or 3 pages or paragraphs or whatever. I'm on a roll now. I've got it. I got my mojo. Like I know what I'm doing. And if I get stuck on something, set it aside. Go have a drink, have something to eat, watch some TV, come back, talk to somebody, and then I mean, oddly enough, I do get a lot of brainstorms in the shower, uh, which is really inconvenient because I can't write it down in the shower. I suppose I could get a greaseproof pencil. Um, yeah, and you just, you know, it'll happen. So getting started is the hardest part, and keeping going is a hard part. Everything's hard.
So what's been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh, wow. Um, I don't know. 3 weeks ago, I was a guest at Pandemonium Books in Cambridge.
Ah,
Um, yeah, they were celebrating, I think it was their 35th anniversary, and they put out a call for writers. And I said, hey, why not? And they contacted me and said, come on down. So I drove 7 hours to go and sit for 2 hours talking to people and doing some readings and got to see a lot of friends. Had a bunch of friends come and show up at the reading, and it was like, that was really cool. I want to do this more. I've been to some book fairs, like Merrimack Valley Book Fair in
yeah.
October. I think I missed one back in the beginning. Those are fun to do because you get to see everybody and you get to sell stuff and you meet the readers. But something where you're kind of the star, that was kind of neat. I mean, I mostly hate being the center of attention until I am, and then it's a lot of fun. Um, that was that was a good time going to the Borderlands boot camps and meeting other writers. That was huge, and meeting David Morrell and meeting Jack Ketchum. Well, I'd met Jack Ketchum before, but meeting David Morrell, talking to him, having breakfast with him. Like, I mean, these are in the great scheme of things, these aren't great adventures, but as a writer, they're like, whoa. Oh, okay. The best adventure at the Stokers in 2019. I My book was coming out that 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 July. I think the Stokers were in March in Grand Rapids, and Robert McCommon was one of the guests of honor. And I've told this story before, and I got so excited once I got sick and was in bed for 2 days. Anyway, I went up to him. I'd met him a couple of times before, and it was after he'd done a talk, and I said, like, I've got some books for you to sign. I've got about 50 of them. I don't want to be that guy at the front of the line that holds everybody up. Is it possible for us to get together sometime at your convenience so you can sign the books? And he says, yeah, I'm going out for dinner. What's your room number? I'll come to your room later on. I'll give you a call when I'm ready. That night, he came up to the room. He had a cider with me. He's sitting on the bed signing all my books. And I happened to mention that, I've got a book coming out. And I showed him the arc and he said, can I have it? So I actually got to sign a book to Robert McCallum, me. And I told about it on Facebook. I told everybody that would listen. We went and stayed with some relatives. I told them, and I was talking like I am now, a mile a minute. I just would not shut up. And I was so excited. I made myself sick. I guess I got too much adrenaline and I just crashed and spent 2 days in bed because I was just like, ah. So yeah,
Wow,
that was quite an adventure.
that is an adventure. Okay. So what
First,
is the
first time I
greatest?
saw a book on a bookstore shelf, it was in your store.
Oh,
So that was
really?
kind of cool. Yeah, that was
One of,
fun.
one of your books?
Yeah,
Eh,
the first book, yeah, the first time I ever saw it in a bookstore was at your store.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
So thank you.
So what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Don't be an asshole. I um especially I've seen it so much where somebody's, they can be a really good writer and they'll say something really, really stupid and offend everybody, and suddenly they're persona non grata. Happened last year with a writer that I really admired, and he's now no longer on the scene. He's nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody even wants to say his name. Um, I've encountered other writers where um, I'm the star. Worship me. You're just a mere mortal. I'm, well, I don't give a shit. I'm a person too. That's special. So don't be that person. So if somebody wants to talk to you, talk to them. Don't just say, "Oh, I don't have time." If you can, like, just be a nice person. Um, because one of these days you'll need that person to be nice to you,
Right.
or that person has been nice to you, and you're, what do you call it? Pay it forward.
Hmm.
So yeah, don't
Okay.
be a don't be a jerk if you
All
can.
right.
Yeah.
Um, and do you have any other advice that you'd want to give to other writers?
Stick with it. Like, just don't quit. It's so easy to give up. I mean, I earlier this year I had a crisis and I didn't write anything for 6 months. I
Mm.
just wanted to quit. And then I wrote a story and it was like, oh, I'm back. I talked to some people and I got some encouragement, but it's it's far too easy to quit and not do it. Unless it's you find another passion. A friend of mine that was a really good writer back at the turn of the century, which sounds really strange, great writer, decided he didn't want to write anymore. He became a blacksmith. And
Wow.
now he's a blacksmith, and he comes to conventions and he sells stuff that he makes as a blacksmith, and he's super happy. That's great. He followed his passion. So I guess, yeah, follow your passion. You want to write, you'll write. You want to paint, you'll paint. Just don't give up. Whatever you're doing, it's not stupid. Um, Creative people always encounter, especially family members, who think what you're doing is a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. If it's making you happy, it's not a waste of time. If you can make somebody else happy, it's not a waste of time. Um, you know, who likes to go to movies? Who likes to read books? Who likes to watch TV, listen to music? It's people like, I was going to say like me, but not necessarily me specifically, but uh, creatives, writers, artists. They do this stuff. So people out there appreciate it. So you're never wasting your time if you're writing something. Just do it. And
Yeah.
there'll be somebody there to help you
Right.
somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I'm extremely shy and I don't say much. I know that's weird. Yeah, I have trouble. walking in front of people. Yeah, like I was scared to death of this interview before because I'm you know, like I'm focused on. Um, I was on a panel this summer at Nikon, and I was like nervous as hell because I'm in front of 100 people there. I just I always sit at the back. Um, if I'm in a situation like a restaurant or a bar, and I have to go to the bathroom, sometimes I can't because I'm in the middle. If I get up, everybody's going to see me get up, and I don't want to be seen. You know, I know that sounds kind of weird. When I was I ran into some people at well, I think it was in my like second year of university, and I'd known them in high school, and they said, "We always thought you were stoned. We thought you were a total stoner, that you were always out of it because you never said anything." I was like,
Oh,
I just listened. I prefer to listen and watch. If I go to a bar with some friends, I like to watch them make fools of themselves, and I just sit there quietly, and people don't know what I am. So, yeah, I'm very, very shy, despite
that's
all this crap that I've been saying.
that's what a lot of writers are saying, that they're very shy. And
Yeah,
it's kind of part of the business,
yeah, yeah.
goes with
I have a
the
pathological fear of height.
territory.
Yeah.
Goes with the
So,
territory. Yeah,
yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
because you're sitting there all day by yourself,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. And there's
know.
nobody to tell me that, oh, like, you know, the shirt you're wearing doesn't fit, or, you know, your flies down, or, you know, why is your hair like that? It's because I like it. None of your business. You know, why do you grow a mustache? Because when I shave, I get zits right here, and I don't like that. So this is a lot easier. And it's been like that since I was 18. You know,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I'm not hiding behind them. Well, I guess I am hiding behind the facial hair in a way, but it's for a medical reason.
Okay.
I'm not Hulk Hogan. I had this before Hulk Hogan's. I am not Hulk Hogan. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, Hulk Hogan's." I won't say what I say. But, so yeah.
Hey, so what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time to do the things you love?
Um, Passions. Well, Diane upstairs. We've been married now for 42 and a half years.
Wow.
We've been together for 44 and a half. Like I'm old. I feel so old. What are my passions? I collect things. I'm a rabid collector. I've got books. I mean, at one point I had about 50,000 books, and I've whittled it down because we just ran out of room. But then I'm making up for that by buying new ones. I had about 70,000 comic books. I got rid of the collection because I lost interest. I now collect McFarlane DC Universe action figures. I got about 300 of those, and the store where I get them, I think he has 10 or 15 of them on hold for me. He just, you know, if one shows up, he puts it aside for me because he knows I want it. The weirdest one, I collect labels of from bottles, cider, beer, whiskey, soda. I collect the labels. I collect the cans. I put them in. I flatten them out and I put them in binders. I've got about 12 feet of binders full of labels, and to the point where, okay, I got a whole bunch of Coca-Cola labels. Now I have to get them from the US because the Canadian Coca-Cola labels are bilingual. The ones in the US are unilingual. Yeah, there's a difference there. I also have a couple that are in English and in Spanish. Well, I'll see if I can get a Holy Spanish. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, for a while I was collecting model kits, and I would get every version of that model kit that came out, exactly the same kit, but 20 different boxes, or the same box, but three different prices imprinted on it. So I want one of each. I'm a lunatic. Once I start collecting, I can't stop. You know, I save all the little pieces of wood from any projects I've got, um, which actually isn't that bad because Diane saves every little piece of fabric that she gets from whenever she's doing her quilts. So that is kind of normal, isn't it? I
Yep.
hope. Oh, and chocolate. I love chocolate. Cadbury's.
Hmm.
Yep.
Good
Love
stuff.
chocolate. Yeah.
Good stuff.
And I
Okay.
find time by just a lot of it is Diane will call me and say, "Get up here. You've been down there 8 hours. Come up here and have something to eat." I forget to eat. You know, come up here and watch some TV. So I'll go up and we usually spend the evening sitting watching TV together. So you know, I get dragged away, which is good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does your writing space look like? I mean, you've already mentioned all the books and everything. So you don't have to mention that again. Um, but what does your writing space look like, and what do you need to have with you when you're not when you're writing or editing?
Okay, my writing space looks exactly like this because this is where I write,
Hmm.
and I'm usually sitting just like this. The most vital thing I have, the Oxford Dictionary. I love the Oxford comma. I was born in England. I'm English. I'm Canadian. Color has a U in it, despite what you Americans say. And it just bugs the hell out of me that I have to take out the U's when I submit stuff down there. Um, I have pencils and pens. I have chocolate. I have jujubes because I like jujubes too. I got a fridge over there full of drinks. I'm a drinkaholic. So far today, I think I've had like 4 cups of tea, a bottle of cranberry juice, 2 bottles of ginger ale. Um, and the only reason I haven't had more is because I'm doing an interview and I can't get up and go and get some. Um, I've got all my reference material around me. I have a laptop. It's a Mac, which I'm not fond of, but it does work. Um, I got a printer over there so I can edit stuff. I got a red pen. I got a big screen so I can do research while I'm working. I got everything I need here to be comfortable. So
Okay.
I don't have
Well,
any animals.
no animals, huh?
No, I have a really sensitive nose and bad smells just and I find animals, I mean, I'm sorry to all the people out there that have cats and dogs. Eh, I, first time I ever held a child, it pooped.
Oh
I mean, I'd
no.
never held a child before, and I'm holding it, and within 5 seconds, it fills its diaper, and it's like, ew, take it away, Like, yeah, I'm a clean freak.
Okay. So when you're writing, do you need perfect silence, or do you like to listen to music? And if music, what kind?
Um, I tried listening to music. I'm a headbanger. I rock from 69 to about 75. That's my prime time. Deep Purple is my all-time favorite band. I love heavy rock. Heavy metal, not so much. Starting to like some of the other kinds, but I can't listen to it when I'm writing because I've tried. Even when I'm working on the rock and roll book and I'm writing about the Uriah Heep concert and I have Uriah Heep playing, I start getting into the music and I'm bopping away to the music. And I was a technical writer for a while, and when I was at work, I think it was the first week I was there, and I had headphones on, and I'm listening to music, and somebody came over and said, "Take the headphones off." I was typing to the music, and I'm bang, 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 like making a hell of a lot of noise. So I get too distracted. So I like quiet. I mean, I can work if there are people around. We been to a few writing groups where we're in public and we're writing, and I can do that. I can concentrate, but I prefer just quiet. Um,
You can sit in a cafe or something
I
and
can do that.
write.
I have done that. Yeah, it's like last Saturday I was at the craft show and there were people all over the place and I was sitting behind my desk and just like anybody comes up I'll look at them, but for most of the time I'm sitting there writing. It's I don't know if I could pull a Harlan Ellison and sit in a store window and type out a story. Um, but yeah, I prefer no distractions. Well, actually, I should, oh look, something shiny. Um, yeah, distractions are like rabbit holes. Go back to the research. I can working on a story last year. I spent an hour looking to find out whether hacksaws existed in 1837
Wow.
because I wanted to make sure that if I have my character using a hacksaw, they better have existed in 1837, and they did, and they were works of art. So rabbit holes, yeah, that's about the biggest distraction for me.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Um, so where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I have to give a plug for Annie's. So
yeah.
you can get
Oh yeah, and it's
John's
great store, great store. I haven't been there in far too long.
you can get
Okay,
John's
Pandemonium
books
Books. Yeah.
yeah, at
Um,
Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613 or email us at orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. So where else can people get your books?
well, uh, Popper Dog in Portsmouth, and I'm sorry, but Amazon, or you can order directly from Haverhill House in Haverhill, Massachusetts. They carry all my books. They carry so many good books. Tony Tremblay, Chris Golden, for example, Jim Moore. The the publisher, like he hasn't published a dud yet. It's just fabulous. But yeah, I'm not famous enough to be in, the big bookstores or even a lot of small bookstores. Um, I'm working on it, but online is probably the easiest way to find my stuff or
Okay.
come to the fairs if I'm there.
And how can people follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and I actually did a post today. But I don't often post. I usually am on reading other people's stuff and commenting on their stuff. I need to I need excuse me, I need to get my act together and start posting more. I mean, I posted about doing this interview, um, which was surprising because I haven't posted about other things I've done where people
Ah,
can find me. Um, Facebook is about it. You can contact me there, message me. I have an email address that it's 13ottawajohn@gmail.com, all lowercase. Um, I'll answer emails. Unlike Brian Keene, I don't get thousands of emails a day. I get three or four, maybe. Lots of advertising, lots of newsletters. I might join Blue Sky if I can
mhm.
figure, like, I'm a pencil and paper guy. I can talk on my phone. I mean, other than using a phone I use my phone to make phone calls. I've recently learned how to text. So I'm a bit of a Luddite. I'll try
Okay.
out. Yeah.
When you write, do you write on your computer, or do you write on a pad and paper?
I have a bunch of notebooks like this where I write down ideas. If I'm not home, sometimes I'll write out something, but usually I write directly onto the computer um, and edit as I go. I know that's a terrible thing to do, but I'm a grammar spelling fanatic, and if I misspell a word, I have to correct it right away. If it's bad grammar, I have to correct it right away. Can't help it, but I can type fairly quickly.
Do you
And
do you oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Do you write the first draft and then edit it, or do you edit as you go along?
As I go along. Um, and a lot of times I start over. When I was working on the folk horror novel, I started it, hadn't finished it. I was working full time at the time. Set it aside for a few months. Went back to it, started at the beginning again, reading it, revising it, getting caught up, and then continuing. I did that 4 or 5 times. Diane was going nuts because I kept starting over. Um, so yeah, I'll short stories. I often get through a first draft, or I'll do the beginning and I'll do the end because I know what the ending is. So I'll do that and then I'll just fill in the blanks. When I wrote my children's books, I had a pretty good idea of what their historical time travel children's books, so I could do all the research about the past. Um, I wrote down chapter headings, because I sort of knew what the action would be, and then I
Mhm.
went and filled in the blanks. So I started out with 65 words of chapter headings, and then I went in and put in another 30,000 words of story. Just fill in the blanks. If I get an idea, I'll go back and write a little section and throw it back there. That's the wonderful thing about working on the computer is I can cut and paste and move things around. It used to be a lot easier in Word before they improved it. Um, but when I was doing my master's thesis, it was like, let's say, 125 type pages, and I went through it and I had to fix things. So I actually had to print it out and cut it up and glue it together again. Um, Canadian history, I use the word parliament. Oh, government. Sorry, government. And sometimes it was supposed to have a capital and sometimes not. So I had to type out a whole bunch of governments with capitals and a whole bunch of governments that were lowercase so that I could go and glue them in where they were supposed to be, um, using the correct term. So yeah, computers are wonderful.
Okay, well, those are all the questions I have for you today, John. So thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me,
Oh, thank you for asking. This is
and hopefully
well,
we'll see you soon.
I don't know when I'll be back down that way again, but I'm sure it'll be soonish, probably in the new year, if we're allowed in. So we'll see.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
And